let's get started. Okay, we spoke on Stadio. We had you on back. I think it was May. It was really an entrepreneurial course that you taught us that day because I just remember some of the comments from the audience saying, "I learned more in this study room than in 5 years at my university." So it is always a pleasure to have you on, Matt, for your knowledge and your know-how. Today we're going to speak for about 30 minutes. We'll leave 10-15 minutes at the end for questions. Obviously, as always, keep them coming because we'll address them either as we speak or at the very end of our conversation. Matt, let's get you introduced for those who might not know you yet. Okay, I'll say a couple things quickly about you and then I'll let you speak. You're a New York native, owner of a Manhattan-based family office North Six Group, which holds interest in several assets such as North Six Agency, a brand communications firm that you founded over 10 years ago, and we'll get to that in a second. Through North Six Group, Matt was a shareholder in SS Campobasso, where he earned a promotion in his first year of the club, and Ascoli clinching the playoffs last year. Okay, Matt, before we get into the soccer part and your new challenge at Campobasso 1919, which will be our main discussion today, why don't you tell us a little more about yourself, your entrepreneurial journey, the challenges you had to overcome, your vision, and how you turn your PR and marketing agency into one of the most powerful in the US.
Sure. Thanks, Danielle. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And we might want to disclose a conflict of interest before we even get started. I'm trying to recruit you eventually over to Campobasso. So I just want to get that out there. At some point, I'm going to figure out a way to make that happen.
That's lovely.
Just real quick. So my name is Matt Rizzetta. I'm the founder and chairman of North Six Group. As you mentioned, Daniele, we are a family office operating company. We have right now 7 assets under management that we own and operate. All are in sports, media, marketing, entertainment. The first business I started was a PR and marketing firm called North Six Agency, N6A. I founded that 13 years ago. And then I got to a point in my career about 10 years in, we had built a nice business. And was really blessed. I had a wonderful management team and the business was able to really sustain itself. And that's when I started to pivot to making investments in other types of businesses, the common theme being that they were businesses I was passionate about. And that's ultimately what brought me to Italian football and to Campobasso, and then ultimately to Ascoli, and now back to Campobasso. But that's really what it was. I grew up, second generation Italian American. My grandparents immigrated here from Monteleone di Puglia in the provincia of Foggia. And my Sunday mornings that was in the heyday of Serie A with AC Milan and Juventus and Inter and all the, Maradona and Napoli teams. And that was really, that was my Sunday mornings were spent in the living room of my grandparents' house, watching games with my grandfather. And my grandparents had a lot of, they inspired me in many ways. And I made a commitment when I was very young. I said, if I could ever, when I grow up and, achieve a certain level of success, if I could ever give back by owning or investing in an Italian football team, as a way of sort of reconnecting with my childhood and showing my grandparents that I made it, I would do that. And, we wound up doing that with Campobasso and then Ascoli and now again with Campobasso. But that was one of the first or second investments we made when we pivoted to this holding company model 2 or 3 years ago now.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, you had success immediately in both your investments, and that speaks to your entrepreneurial eye that you have. I always want you to mention the challenges that you had to overcome with your N6A, with your agency. I like the anecdote of when you speak about where you started in your garage with your wife that was pregnant. And can you please speak about that, because I do believe it's truly inspiring.
Yeah, I was 26 years old. It was 2009 into 2010. It was a terrible economy. We were in a recession, or at the beginning, or the beginning of a recession here in the United States at that time. And I came home from work one day, and I had always wanted to start a firm of my own. We were expecting our first child at the time, Viviana. Viviana, she's now turning 13 years old, so it's kind of crazy to think about it. We have 3 daughters, Viviana, Valentina, and Simona. And I wanted to start a business of my own. And at the time, I had no money. I had no entrepreneurial experience. I had no idea how to run a business. But, thanks to the support of my family, they gave me their blessing, and I was able to start the business out of my basement, and we just hustled. We worked really hard, scrapped our way to building a nice, small business in a couple of years. And 10 years later, that small business turned into one of the fastest growing marketing firms in the United States. And I was really blessed. I was able to hire some great people around me that ultimately, when I moved to this new investment, holding company model a few years ago, those people who were with me for the journey at the agency were able to really take over, and we were able to pass the torch forward and carry the legacy of the agency into this new generation without me, this new era without me having to worry about hiring somebody from the outside, and that's a major blessing and really a testament to the people we had hired. But that's how it all started. Very humble roots. I named our agency North 6th Agency after North 6th Avenue, which is the street to which my grandparents immigrated to from Italy. So, you're sensing obviously a common theme here. A lot of my career is really a dedication to them, and, the hard work and sacrifice they made to put me in a position like my parents did to give me the resources to, accomplish something, something special.
Absolutely, and that's why I always want you to repeat that story, because it is very inspiring. Matt, let's get down to today, or the last couple of months. Actually, let's roll it back to 2 years ago. You acquired a stake in SS Campobasso, earned a promotion from Serie D to Serie C. Last year, you guys finished 13th in Serie C, and then over the summer, a little bit of chaos happened. The team, after a ruling by the Consiglio di Stato, right? It was excluded from Serie C, did not have a chance to take part in Serie D. Right now, that team is kind of up in the air, hanging there. And so that's when you decided to acquire the rights of Campobasso 1919, which used to be the second most important team in the city. Right now, it's the main team. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you have basically started this new challenge. But can you please shed some light on how this all unfolded over the summer? Like, what was the timeline like?
Sure. And I'll go back. I'll give you the whole story after, but let's, get to sort of how we arrived here. So it was July 1st. I mean, I can remember it vividly. I'm sitting in Tennessee with my children, my 3 daughters, and we were at a museum. And my phone just started buzzing uncontrollably. Like, I was getting message after message after message. And, we'll get into the whole story, but Campobasso, we had invested in the club 2 years ago, won the championship, got from Serie D to Serie C, got the team promoted for the first time in 32 years. Our first year as co-owners in the club, it couldn't have gone any better. But then we had a falling out with the majority shareholder, which we can get into later. And, I'll be as open and honest as I can be about what happened there. And that essentially forced us to divest from Campobasso last season. And we were really blessed. We were able to form an incredible partnership with the Pulcinelli family and everybody at Ascoli, who were still very actively involved, both as an investor, of course, as a co-owner and as a sponsor. But that's really what brought us to Ascoli, was we had this falling out with our majority owner at Campobasso. So that was painful, watching last season from the sidelines after we had gotten promoted. It was the first time in 32 years. It was just a great moment for the piazza, going out, partying with the fans, celebrating with the fans. It was just, emotionally, especially during a time in 2021, we were right in the heart of the pandemic. So just to see that project really breathe so much hope and life into this region during a time of crisis was incredibly rewarding. And then just to have that taken away from us really because of just, in my opinion, a lot of greed and, borderline corruption last year was really painful. I mean, that was like losing a child, and it was hard to watch that unfold from behind the scenes and not have any say in it. That was difficult. So anyway, fast forward to July 1st, I just wanted to set the stage. So July 1st this summer, my phone starts buzzing, and everybody in Italy is, texting me on WhatsApp, did you hear what happened to Campobasso? And I had no idea. It was a little too painful, frankly, to even follow a lot of the headlines given what had happened previously. So I hadn't really been keeping tabs on the recent news. And they said, Matt, they're like, you got to check this out. I forget it was the Fiji. I think it was Kovisok was the first one. I can't keep up with all of the appeals, but I believe it was Kovisok rejected Campobasso's application for reinstatement in Serie C because of administrative issues. It had to do with late tax payments, essentially. And there were some other things, but that was really the core issue that was causing the lack of re-entrance into Serie C. So basically, just think about the roller coaster these poor fans had went through. We take over the team, or we invest in the team during COVID. We get them promoted for the first time in 32 years. The following year, their first time in 3 decades in Serie C, they finish in 13th place. They have a very good season, competitive on the pitch. And then because of reasons that are essentially completely out of their control, football is taken away from them. They don't get readmitted into Stadeo. They lose that dream a year later, and it had nothing to do with the play. It wasn't the player's fault, the coach's fault. It was the fault of ownership that was really careless and reckless with a lot of administrative and economic responsibilities. So that's basically what happened, and that was July 1st, and essentially that's when this whole journey to get Campobasso back and this rebirth and this, redemption story for us began. It began July 1st. We had then from that point forward just really followed the news closely from behind the scenes. We have a lot of people in Campobasso that were very close to me that were keeping me updated. Ivano Maselli actually is one of them, who was very, has been really a godsend and a very active advocate for us and getting us back to Campobasso. He's a lawyer based in Molise and also a huge Campobasso fan. And he was sort of keeping me updated as all of this unfolded. And anyway, we just followed every step of the way. And, we went from Kovisok to Koni to the Fiji to TAR to the Consiglio di Stato, and every single layer of the Italian judicial system, both sporting and legal judicial system, rejected the owner's appeal. And we had to make a quick decision. The piazza, the people in Campobasso were going to lose football because every appeal got rejected. So we were sitting there. It was early September, and we were actually prepared to buy the club from the old owner. We were actually prepared to do that. We had an LOI in the works, and we were on the fence, but we were leaning toward potentially buying the club back from the old owner. But then when they lost all their appeals, we realized that was not going to be feasible. So we had to make a quick decision. And that's what brought us to Campobasso 1919, which I know we'll get into. But essentially, we had to make a decision within 48 hours to move forward or to hold off on it. And we decided, let's use this Campobasso 1919 team, which historically has been sort of a forgotten team in the region. It's played second fiddle to the main club. But now with the main club essentially dying, we were like, instead of getting the main club, let's go get the second club and let's turn it into the main club, and let's build a really ambitious project and use it as a platform to do something that essentially we started out to do 2 or 3 years ago. And that's what we did.
Yeah, the timeline is fascinating because the final verdict, I think, from Consiglio di Stato came on August 26th. And that's incredible because that's when most leagues start. And you just said you had 48 hours to decide. That's because the Eccellenza season was going to start?
Yeah, we actually got very lucky because the dates kind of get blurry, Daniele, for me, because there's been so many dates thrown my way. But I believe Eccellenza, we had already started the cup competition. So we played 2 or 3 cup games. And I believe we were supposed to play our first game September 11th. But then the FIGC granted a 1-week delay, which turned out to be a blessing for us because it gave us an extra week to actually go out and build the team. We didn't even close on the transaction until Sunday, September 11th, deep in the night. And our first game was last Saturday, September 17th. So we basically closed the deal September 11th. We already had identified the main people who we were hiring as coach and direttore sportivo and all of that, but we couldn't actually sign players to contracts or begin operating the team, obviously, until the deal closed. So deal closes September 11th that night. And, as of September 12th at 6 a.m., we're out there hustling to sign players and put a team together. And I want to just give a shout out to everybody who's worked on the inside. Like, obviously, my group, North Six Group, is getting obviously all of the, the attention for operating this team, but we wouldn't be in a position to do this without all the people who are working so hard behind the club. And I mean, these guys are working and women are working 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. I mean, it's insane. My partner, Nicola Cirincione, here in the United States, has basically been leading the project hand in hand with Ivano Maselli in Italy. Pino De Filippis, who's our direttore sportivo, he's been working around the clock to put a team together. He's put a really competitive team together. Obviously, we won our first match 5-0, so that was great. Pino Di Meo as the head coach. I've been around a lot of head coaches, including Andrea Sotil, who now is doing amazing things in Serie A with Udinese. Pino Di Meo, just from a character perspective and his fight and his hunger, is second to none. And I've really enjoyed getting to know him over the past couple weeks. And anyway, the list goes on.
I think we just lost you. Can you guys from the audience tell me? Matt. For a second.
Daniele?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, sorry.
You're good.
I got an incoming call. Sorry.
Sorry, you were about to finish that kind of
no, I was just saying,
point.
I was just saying our group, North Six Group, obviously we're the operating team and the investment, the investment firm behind the club, but the team on the inside is the one that should be getting all the credit. I mean, these people have worked literally 24 hours a day nonstop for the past 2 weeks now to put a team together. And it's not just the team on the pitch, but it's everything that goes into it off the pitch. The stadium was unavailable because the old ownership group basically left it abandoned. So we had to go find a temporary stadium as we are working on upgrades to get the stadium ready to host our home games. And we had to work with the mayor to get recognition as the primary club of the city. And we had to get a website ready. And, my coworkers at North Six Group, Amber and the team at North Six Group, I mean, they worked literally night, day and night over the weekend to get those kind of things ready. So, it's easy to just say this stuff. You look at the finished product and you say, oh, this is easy to do. But when you're on the inside, you really need an amazing team to put these sort of things together.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not easy because I remember you telling us how the due diligence process takes long, right? When you talked to us about your first investment in SS Campobasso or in Ascoli, you told us about all the work behind the scenes. So thinking of the timeline here, July 1st is probably the date when you start thinking about, okay, what can I do here to keep football in Campobasso and to bring it back to an elite level. And the first week of September, you decide to acquire the team. So you had 2 months to do this entire process. So it must have been stressful. You must have really been up all day, especially because you engineered all of it remotely, right? From New York.
Yeah. And the most challenging part, Daniele, was honestly, it took so many twists and turns. We didn't know what club we were buying. For the first 2 months, we couldn't do anything until we understood what the appeal process looked like for the old team. So if the old team won their appeal, this whole project with Campobasso 1919 would not have even been an option because it would have continued to live as the second team of the city, which obviously wasn't something we were interested in, in building. We obviously wanted to build the first team. So we had to wait on the sidelines as the old ownership group went through this constant, in my opinion, meaningless and useless web of of appeal processes, and they all got rejected, and that just wound up setting us back and back and back, and that made it even more difficult. So by the time we finally got closure on the old team, that the old team was not going to be eligible to play any, at least at any significant level of football this year, we had about 48 hours to do the deal. And also, I want to just say we have Angelo Rispoli, who is the president, the old president of, or the outgoing president of Campobasso 1919. He was amazing. I mean, he put aside his own self-interests and said, look, I want to restore and secure football for the city of Campobasso and the Molise region. And he knew he had a platform to do that. He didn't have the means to go build the team, I think, in the way that we're planning to build them. But he at least had the humility to step aside and to work with us in good faith and get a deal done. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have even been able to do this.
So I have a question about the fan base, because I assume that Campobasso 1919 and SS Campobasso had two different fan bases. So what's going to happen now? Do you think that some of the fans from SS Campobasso will start supporting Campobasso 1919, considering that the previous club might disappear? How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, we've gotten incredible. This was a big fundamental issue that we considered before we did the deal. We said, do the fans want to follow this project? And what we found was that fans in Campobasso are really the greatest fans there are. They are passionate. They live and breathe football, and they just want football in their city, and they want it in the hands of a serious ownership group. So we were able to get that intelligence before we did the deal. So before we did the deal, we basically knew the fans were coming with us. And, that's already been evidenced immediately out of the gate. I mean, our first game last week, we were on the road at Agnone, and we had like 300 fans travel to the game. You're talking about an Eccellenza game on the road. I mean, that's pretty unheard of. And so they've been amazing. The fans really were the reason we did this. I mean, economically, we could have done a lot of other deals inside and outside of football that would have made more sense. So this was not an economic story for us. This was a story of really, giving hope to a region, giving a sense of restoring a sense of pride and using football to do that for a region. And, for me, that's what this is. This is a redemption story. It's a rebirth story. And I couldn't be happier to be doing it. It is not really an economic story, because taking over a fifth tier club, obviously the revenue base is incredibly limited. We're not talking about Ascoli, where we have, millions of euros coming in from TV rights and merchandising yet. But, but obviously in the future, we believe we will, but we're starting from the bottom. And, Daniele, I started at the bottom in my life and my career, and I'm not afraid to start at the bottom again and to dream big. And that's what this project is going to be all about.
And I love how you're not giving up. And that's why I wanted to give the headline of a sense of rivincita, because it's really what it is. And I love the motivation you have. And I remember you telling me a couple of years ago that you want to erase the stereotype of Molise non esiste, and despite all these new challenges that you are encountering, you are sticking to that idea, and you want to really bring back football, professional football in Campobasso. So that's really a noble cause, besides being a very exciting one. And oh yeah, I wanted to ask you, Matt, what's you acquired also? So like speaking with the mayor, you also agreed on playing home games at the Stadio Nuovo Romagnoli. Is that correct? The over 20 seat stadium in Campobasso.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful stadium, the Romagnoli, also called the Selva Piana, a 25,000 seat stadium. Right now, I think this year will probably be approved for up to 8,000. Last year in Serie C it was 14,000, but it's a 25,000 seat capacity. It's hosted games against Juventus and AC Milan in the past. So that was a big part of this project. I mean, in order to be the first team of the city, we need to play in the premier facility in the city, which was the stadium. So we were working behind the scenes with Roberta Gravina, the mayor of Campobasso. He's been incredibly supportive of our project. We were able to work out a deal to get the exclusive rights to the stadium. And that was a big turning point in this whole deal. When we knew we had the stadium secured and we knew we had the fans, I kind of looked at my partner, Nicola Cirincioni, and I said, look, let's do this, because those were the two fundamental things. If you have the fans on your side and you have the stadium, you're pretty well protected at that point. So that's when we decided to move forward. The stadium was basically left abandoned, though, by the old ownership group after their last game, and I guess it was in May. So this summer, there's been virtually no work done to the stadium. So the field is in just a total state of complete, disarray, and it needs a lot of work. So there's probably going to be a 3 or 4 week upgrade process. And in the meantime, we worked with the community of Riccia in Molise to host our games, which will be interesting because it only hosts, I think, a few hundred fans. So that'll be an interesting dynamic. We have a couple thousand that want to show up, but there's only room for 100 or 2.
Yeah, so Matt, I have to be honest, I was not fully aware of all the disagreements between you and the previous owner. So how did you, so when you decided to come back and acquire Campobasso 1919, did you get some feedback from the people, from the ultras, from the the fan base, from the technical staff? Like, how did you kind of gauge what was the feeling for you coming back to Campobasso and trying to start this new project?
Well, it was interesting. It was almost like a Hollywood movie, Daniele, because so what happened was, after we got the team promoted a few years ago from D to C, we had an LOI in place to take over the majority of the club. And the majority owner at the time, in our opinion, our position was they acted in incredibly bad faith because they didn't want to sell the club. They saw all the upside and they saw all of the value. Together we were building for the team, and they didn't want to sell the club. So they basically reneged on the LOI we had by intentionally acting in bad faith. You can imagine it's not hard to do that. You can not send financial documents when you're supposed to for, the other group to be doing due diligence. They, intentionally delayed things. And basically they put us in a position where, even though we had a signed LOI, our hands were tied and we couldn't acquire the majority. That's basically then what we did was, and we had seen a lot of things that were not so great on the inside of the club that first year. And, I can get into some stories you can imagine. I mean, there were, we had made player bonus payments that we felt were not, paid the way, or not going to, the players the way they should have been. We brought in a ton of revenues to the team, and the revenues, we weren't sure exactly where, those were flowing into the P&L. There were things that we had signed in our contract that were not being respected. Anyway, I don't want to, out of respect for, the old ownership group and legal process and whatnot, I don't want to get into too many of those details, but I just wanted to make it clear that we were not happy. There was a reason why we were so adamant about us needing to be in majority control for us to feel comfortable running the team. And the co-owner just wouldn't give us the majority, despite the fact that they were bound to do it through an LOI. And so we actually wound up issuing a statement, because there were a lot of things that I didn't like, and they just didn't sit right with me. So, as a business, we sat down as a management team and decided to issue a statement basically saying, hey, here's the situation to the fans. We're here to invest. We came to invest from day one. We want to invest. We have an LOI to buy the majority. And as long as the owner, the co-owner, the majority owner acts in good faith to respect the LOI, we're here to stay for the long run. And if they don't, then we can't continue in good faith to move forward without any sort of operating control or ability to impact decisions. So we made that statement to the fans, and it wasn't, by many, it was not so well received. Fans don't want to really get involved, and I understand it. I'm a fan myself, so fans don't want to get involved in all of the boardroom politics and back off. They just want to win football games, So, but we felt like we had to state that, because we had a feeling if we didn't, there was going to be something in the future that could go wrong, and we didn't want to be in any way perceived to be complicit in that. So in hindsight, even though we wound up getting some criticism, I'm very proud of my team for issuing that statement, because a year later, everything we warned about and everything that we said could happen in terms of mismanagement and improper administrative discipline and financial discipline, all of that came true, and ultimately was the reason the old team got kicked out of professional football and led us to a path where we now are bringing real football back to Campobasso. So, it was crazy. That's basically how that whole thing went down. And then it was even more bizarre. You can imagine for me, it was more bizarre a year later to get a call from the majority owner, who obviously we weren't on the greatest of terms, and basically, begging us to buy the team back because they had no path forward. And so that was, everything that unfolded this summer was like from a Hollywood movie. It was pretty surreal.
Like a guess who's back kind of feeling. I'm gonna ask you the last question, then we'll open up the floor for questions from the audience. Matt, have you already thought about bringing some Campobasso 1919 content to the United States? Because we spoke many times how there's a lot of Molise expats in the US. So I was gonna ask you, are you thinking of doing something similar to what you did a couple years ago with Italian football TV?
Yeah, absolutely. This is basically us doing what we set out to accomplish 2 or 3 years ago with Campobasso. We're just starting a few pegs down on the pyramid, and we have 100% of the operating control. So, this is a living, breathing creature for us that we can bring to life, and we love it. For me, this is a story that began because of passion and family and immigrants and expats, and this is really, in a small way, began as a way to, as a dedication to them. And that's what this project is going to be. This club is going to be more than just a provincial club in the 5th tier of Italy. I mean, we have really big ambitions and hopes, and we're running the club like a Serie A, Serie B level operation already, just from a, back office infrastructure standpoint. And that's what it's going to be. This is, and a lot of that, to answer your question, is going to concentrate on exporting the brand, internationalizing the brand. So there's 300,000 Molisani in Molise. There's over 1 million Molisani that live in, in other countries across the world, primarily in North America, United States, Canada. So there's a heavy concentration too in Australia. So we're going to be very aggressive about promoting the club in those areas and really, making this a club. Look, if you're a Juventus fan, if you're a Manchester United fan, if you're a Manchester City fan, if you're a AC Milan fan, you're not going to renounce your loyalty to those clubs to come root for Campobasso. But we're hoping we can really serve as a platform that all of those fans can empathize with and adopt as their second team, because our vision for Campobasso is not about just being a football team. We need to win football games. We are going to win football games. We're going to make this a really rewarding project for the fans, believe me. But it's going to be much more than just football. This is going to be about, using this as a platform for social change and to represent all of the things that, frankly, put me in a position to accomplish some of the things in my career that I'm really proud to have accomplished.
And the first game of the season was quite a statement. You guys won 5-0 away. So off to a great start. Okay, let's open it up for questions, guys. If you have questions, please raise your hand. You can step on the pitch or type your questions in the chat. We have one from Samuele. He's asking, what do you think of the landscape of Italy? Is the Italian system a good system for your idea of football? Samuele, I think we need to clarify. Do you mean from a playing style perspective, or just from an operating perspective of ownership and management? Let's see if he narrows it down in terms of what he means with, is the Italian system a good system for your idea of football? Okay, we have a raised hand. Claudio, we're unable to talk. Claudio is a goalkeeper, so let's no. Claudio, you're in the midfield. Don't make any mistakes. You're in the midfield.
I'm in midfield. Matt, as always, thank you for coming us and delighting us with your adventures. I have 2 questions. One is about soccer. One is more about your entrepreneurial journey. The one about soccer is, if Campobasso does as well as we all hope it will do, and it finds itself in the same division as Ascoli, are you going to have to divest one of the 2 teams? How does that work?
It's so funny you brought that up. So you talk about everything just fell into place, Claudio, this summer for us in a way that, I really believe was in many ways destiny and signs from above. And you got to remember, this is very much a personal, journey for me that began with my grandparents and all that. So when I get these little signs, it's hard for me to interpret them as anything other than, signs from above that I should be doing some of these deals. So one of the reasons we could not do the Campobasso deal, even if we wanted to, a few months ago, was because of the multiproprietà, that the FIGC had installed. I think it was as of 2024, you couldn't own two clubs at any level. And then it was like destiny on. I don't know when it was exactly, but I think it was early July. It was July 4th or 5th or something like that. It was right after Campobasso originally got rejected for Serie C. They postponed. The FIGC announced that they were suspending that ruling until at least 2028. So at that point, we were like, okay, well, we know this won't be a problem until at least 2028. Because you couldn't even own with multiproprietà, you couldn't even own two clubs no matter what level they were. So that would have put us totally out of the game on this. And then when that got suspended until 2028, we felt like that was a great sign. It was almost a sign telling us, hey, let's do it. This is the powers that be that are telling everybody, if you're entrepreneurial and you're here to invest in the right way in Italian football, you can buy two teams just as long as they're not in the same league. And then, look, they're two different projects with two different ambitions. Ascoli, we were 2 wins away from getting promoted to Serie A last year, even though we've had a rough kind of past couple weeks. I think we have a great team. I think we're going to be right in the thick of things to the bitter end in Serie B this year. So obviously our goal for Ascoli is to be in Serie A, and our goal for Campobasso, I don't want to put any crazy thoughts into the minds of our fans, but we're here to win. I mean, we're investing in an ambitious way, and we want to bring this team up. The goal is to get 2 promotions in 2 years and have the club right back in Serie C. And we're going to play to win no matter what league we're in. If we find ourselves in Serie C, we're going to put a budget and a resource base together to win that league too. And that's how we feel. But I think in terms of Ascoli versus Campobasso, I don't really see those being competitive at any stage of the journey. I think they'll be synergistic, but not competitive.
Well, it makes sense. Yeah, I didn't know that you couldn't, because obviously we knew Lotito with Salernitana and Lazio. We knew what happened, but they were in Serie A and Serie B, so clearly you could own 2 different clubs. I didn't know that there was a prohibition to own any 2 clubs at all.
Yeah, and it was going to start in 2024, I believe. So we had 1 season. We would have had 1 season. It just wouldn't have worked,
Yeah. So second soccer related question. This is more fantasy, and then I'll ask you the entrepreneurial one. If you could buy any Serie A team, which one would you buy, and why?
Well, can I just put an asterisk on that? And I would like to have Ascoli be the Serie A
Of
team.
course.
Great answer.
That's the answer of the entrepreneur. I'm going to earn my spot. I'm not going to buy my spot. I like that. So, question about your from an entrepreneur perspective. You mentioned your being 26 and starting the company, and you started a PR company. Did you know anything about PR? Really? Did you why PR, and how did you basically faked it until you made it, right? Because essentially that's what you had to do, and you did it very well.
Yeah, and I'm turning 40 and I'm still faking it till we're making it.
We all are.
Some things don't change. But no, I mean, look, same thing with Italian football. I didn't know the first thing about Italian football other than I was a fan, and it's been 3 years and we've made a lot of mistakes and we've learned a lot of lessons. And I feel, this is another reason we didn't go in for the majority of Campobasso the first time we did it, because I didn't think we were ready. I didn't think we were experienced enough. We didn't have the right network, the right relationships. But now, a few years later, I feel like we're ready to, wholly own and operate a club like this. Your question around PR, I was 26, so I had 3 or 4 years of experience. I had no business experience. And I remember at the time I read a quote by Tony Shea, who was the CEO and founder of Zappos. He actually passed away tragically, I think it was a year or 2 ago. And the quote really changed my life and my perspective on entrepreneurship. He said, somebody asked him, if he was passionate about shoes or what he knew about shoes, because when Zappos started, it was a shoe, online shoe retailer. And he said, I didn't know the first thing about shoes. He said, but I was just really passionate about customer service. and just making the customer experience incredible and unforgettable. And I never forgot that. And I really I believe that. I mean, in my business journey has taken me to all sorts of different places. We're investing in marketing agencies and sports franchises and media companies and wine companies. And frankly, I don't know, some of these times, I don't even know the first thing about some of these businesses. In time, you learn about them and you become a domain expert. But when you're doing the deals, there's a first for everyone. You have to learn by making mistakes. But I think if you keep this common thread of, hey, I don't care what line of business I'm getting into, if it's a soccer team, if it's a media company, if it's a marketing agency, I don't care what kind of business it is. If I'm just going to be laser focused on building the best possible customer experience and just making the customer obsessed with the product we're offering, I think it'll take you far. And that's really what we're doing with soccer. And obviously surrounding yourself with good people. I'm not the direttore sportivo. If we were, we would be automatically relegated to promozione this year. So I know that. And, you want to surround yourself with people who are much smarter than you as operators.
Love it. It's a theme that I've observed in many of my friends that are entrepreneurs, is that the actual subject matter is not important. What drives people is getting groups of people together to solve problems, and it's the problem-solving challenge that ends up driving the entrepreneur. Not so much whether it is building rockets or building media company or building software.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look at so many of these. Look, in business, Claudio, you know better than anybody. In business, your business, no matter what, it's going to take so many curves, and it's going to, be reinvented and it's going to evolve into a creature that is completely different than the business you probably set out to start, no matter what line of business you're in. Look at Amazon. Amazon started as a book retailer. People forget about it, but it started as a book, retailer, and then it became, arguably the most powerful company in the world. But so I just think I think your common thread and your core values and principles as a business, I think they need to be more than just product specific. I think they need to stand for something larger than that. Usually that has innovation or the customer or collaboration, like you mentioned, at the core.
Yeah, my favorite one is YouTube was a dating site.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was a dating site. And then they figured out that people like to upload videos, and then eventually they said, screw it, let's just turn into a user-generated video platform. And there you go.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, Matt, question from the audience, from Joe. He's asking, do you believe a data-driven approach in the football operations of the club can help Campobasso? And I'm going to add something here, especially in a league where it might be tough to collect data.
So I'm a big fan of data. It's actually separate from football, just in business in general. I think I have a saying, data without discretion is destruction. So I think that you need to keep that in mind. Data can be the most valuable asset and tool you have in any type of business. Football is no different. I mean, we're constantly analyzing, formations and minutes and schemes and everything you could possibly imagine. But if you don't, at the end of the day, it's human beings that ultimately make the decisions and I think drive impact. So, you can't use data. When we won the championship with Campobasso 2 years ago, last year with Ascoli, and look at Ascoli last year. Ascoli, by the numbers, we should have been in the relegation zone, but we punched so far above our weight because of little things that would not show up on a data report. Because of team chemistry and the locker room dynamic and how Coach Sotil managed personalities. And, he was just an incredible manager of personalities. Those are things that will never show up on a spreadsheet. So I think it's this combination. I think data is really just a resource that you need to use and a tool you need to use to guide decisions. But ultimately, it's the human mind that I think is going to impact change on any decision. So, data without discretion is always destruction, in my opinion.
Yeah, agree. Especially the part about, the personalities, the locker room dynamics. It's just so vital. And especially in Italy, you have players with huge personalities, like players who really make a difference because they're so talented that you really cannot put down on a report sheet what they do to benefit the team. So I definitely agree with that.
Well, look at you, Daniele. If I just looked at you by the data, you have the best statistics in the world. You look amazing. And then from all I hear, you're a big diva in the locker room. So how would we?
I love that.
I'm just kidding. You're the furthest thing from a diva.
No, I love that. I love the joke. Matt, let's give the question a couple more minutes for. Let's give the audience a couple more minutes for questions. Meanwhile, I was just curious about one thing. When you make your next trip to Italy, how's that gonna work logistically? Are you gonna spend some time in Ascoli, some time in Campobasso? What do you plan on doing when you're here?
Well, again, these are all to me just crazy signs like that are just unexplainable. So I'm going out with Nicola Cirincione. We're going out next week. We're going to have our ownership press conference to introduce our project on Friday. We play on Saturday, and then Ascoli, of all places, is playing in Benevento on Sunday, the second. So it's like an hour from Campobasso. And what are the odds? So we're going to be in Campobasso, then we're going to go to Benevento to support our boys at Ascoli, and then a couple days in Rome for some business meetings, and then back to New York.
Love that. Destiny is fate is on your side. Let's see if the audience has no further questions. I believe we can call it. And Matt, thank you so much for all the insight that you always give us. It's really, really inspiring, and I mean that. It's not just cliche, really. I know I told you last time, right, after our room, that the audience was just impressed by the amount of know-how that you shared. So thank you for that. Enjoy your trip back to Italy next week, and wishing you best of luck in both seasons, actually. And we'll definitely keep an eye on Ascoli and Campobasso 1919.
Thank you, Daniele, and Claudio. Congratulations on everything you're doing at Stadeo. It's been amazing to watch your progress, and we're always here to support in any way we can.
Awesome. Grazie, Matt.
Niente. Grazie a voi.
Matt, a lot of thanks from the audience too, and with that, we'll leave you. Thank you again. Really, grazie mille,
guys.
Matt.
Grazie. Buona serata. Ciao.
Altrettanto. Ciao. Ciao.